with Sam Cedar.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Cedar.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, December 9th, 2019. My name is Sam Cedar. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America. Downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, impeachment moves ahead with evidentiary arguments presented by Republican and Democratic lawyers from both the House and Intel committees. Meanwhile, our generation's Pentagon Papers show the failure and futility of the 18-year-old Afghan war. Back in D.C., Bill Barr setting the table to serve Rudy on a silver platter. Took everything I could to risk the temptation of combining the bus and the platter and the table metaphors. Meanwhile, Bill Barr is about to be embarrassed himself by his own DOJ's Investigators of the Investigators report being released today. The first of two. And in the wake of the House Democrats passing a Voting Rights Act fix, House progressives may sink a drug bill after Pelosi kiboshes the ability for Medicare to bargain for drugs. Meanwhile, India poised to keep Muslims from becoming citizens as part of an ongoing project to marginalize tens of millions of Muslims in that country. Back here, Elizabeth Warren earned $65,000 a year over the course of 2 decades, working on bankruptcy payouts for corporate malfeasance. Congress and the White House strike a deal for paid leave. Kansas City votes to make public buses free.
Hell yeah.
Let's do this. If Kansas City can do it, New York can do it. Man, all this and more on today's program, ladies and gentlemen. Wake up. We got a lot of news. All right, let me just keep you abreast of what has happened so far today. We watched this morning live. If you were with us, we didn't make a big deal out of it. We weren't sure we were going to do it. I do want to get Castor bringing his grocery bag into the hearing. I have a feeling that's done to make him seem like a regular guy.
It's like he pulled it out of Scotty B's pickup truck.
Yeah, exactly. Except for one wonders why I didn't use a plastic bag. But we'll get there. I don't want to get ahead of myself. So this morning we heard Steve Castor. He is the Republican attorney, staff attorney for both the House and the Intelligence Committees. He and Barry Burke, who is the House Judiciary Committee lawyer, they testified first, and they basically just laid out how the day was going to go, I guess, more or less. And then Daniel Goldman came in and testified on behalf of the Intelligence Committee. Then Steve Castor came in again as in a different role. That is the lawyer for the Intelligence Committee. He has not testified yet. They're on a break. Maybe they're coming back about now. And he's just going to talk some jibber jab. We have a little bit of what he says up front. I mean, look, if you want a succinct 45-minute version of the case against Donald Trump, you go back, you watch the last 45 minutes of our coverage this morning. It is Daniel Goldman walking through the whole thing. Barry Burke has a more sort of like a poetic version of this earlier, but the prose really comes from Goldman. I mean, that's the TikTok, as it were. And it's pretty complete. Steve Castor just had basically, we're going to poo-poo this more than anything else. And that's what it was. And we'll get to that in a bit. And I'll talk about, I was on the Hills, The Rising this morning. And Crystal Ball and I, Sagar didn't really bring up much, but Saga rather. But Crystal Ball and I also talked about impeachment. She's more skeptical than I am about it. But I will reiterate some of that in a bit. I mean, the skepticism, certainly something that people are aware of. But we'll talk more about impeachment as we go along. Welcome. It's going to be another one of those weeks. We are also, I should tell you, 10 days away from the last debate of 2019. I suspect there's going to be more in 2020. I'm not aware of them. But we will have a debate in a week or so. It'll be a week from Thursday. We will cover the debate live. It'll be the final debate, like we said, of 2019. We are now about 2 months out from the Iowa caucus. I think it's the February 12th. Not 100% sure about that. And things are heating up. We will talk about the campaign today. Pete Buttigieg seems to be having a little bit of trouble, in terms of things like transparency, things like getting his story straight. We will talk about that as well. We'll talk about Elizabeth Warren's release of her work that she did for as an attorney. I think contemporaneous while she was teaching, of course, as a law professor. That happens quite often. What she did with these cases, getting paid primarily by corporations in this instance. However, I think on closer examination, it's not necessarily work that she should have a problem with. I think that's probably why she was transparent about it. We'll also talk about this paid leave that I would be shocked if it happens, but maybe it will. That would be good. And we're anticipating the release of the Inspector General report from the Department of Justice on the appropriateness of the FBI's seeking a FISA warrant on members of the Trump campaign. By all accounts, it appears that the Inspector General is going to find that, yeah, they did it appropriately. Sorry, Bill Barr. And according to leaks, we don't know yet, Bill Barr's hand-picked prosecutor to get to the bottom of what is another one of these right-wing conspiracy theories, that the deep state was making contact with the Trump campaign through double agents and trying to ensnare George Papadopoulos to it's not 100% clear to me.
This is so deep. It's a deep state.
It's so deep. And but apparently this Bill Barr's hand-picked prosecutor, now we haven't seen the report yet. Well, all we've seen is sort of leaks and reports to that, and supposedly told the IG, like, there's nothing there. That turns out not to exist. So we'll see. We will get to that in a moment. But first, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, there's a huge problem with anti-Semitism. There is not only is there an election well, we have, of course, an election happening in the UK this week. We also have an election happening in this country a year from now. It's a problem, apparently, with anti-Semitism on the Donald Trump ticket. And here he is, speaking to some right-wing Jews at the IAC National Summit. I'm not sure what IAC stands for. I think it's the Israel Action or Israel American Committee. I'm not 100% sure what it is. It is, but if they've invited Donald Trump to speak, it's the Israeli American Council. And in a 45-minute speech in Hollywood, Florida, the president wanted to convince the Jews, like, you only got one place to go, guys. Yeah, exactly. Here is Donald Trump.
A lot of you are in the real estate business because I know you very well. You're brutal killers, not nice people at all, but you have to vote for them. You have no choice. You're not going to vote for Pocahontas, I can tell you that. You're not going to vote for the wealth tax. Yeah, let's take 100% of your wealth away. No. Even if you don't like me, some of you don't. Some of you I don't like at all, actually. And you're going to be my biggest supporters because you'll be out of business in about 15 minutes if they get it.
This is what Jeremy Corbyn said.
Jews do love wealth. It's
Right.
true. All that filthy lucre. You can't see me, but I'm rubbing my hands together.
Well, I mean, didn't he, during the campaign, he went in front of a bunch of Jews and said, look, you want to give me your money? I'm not going to take it.
I like negotiating with you people. Toughest negotiators.
There you go. You really,
Imagine
really
if Jeremy Corbyn was like, the Tories actually really hate you. We merely tolerate you, so you have no choice.
Yeah, exactly.
No choice. All right, off to see Hezbollah now.
I mean, if Bernie Sanders went in front of that same thing and go, look, I know how much you like money, and you're afraid you're going to lose it with me, so...
I was more on the learning side of things.
There you go.
I go for money or learning. Though, of course, now I'm a millionaire through socialism, so maybe that's pretty good, too. Anybody want any nosh? Because you're not going to afford extra pretty soon after I'm president.
It's stunning what he gets away with on this.
Well, right-wing Jews will definitely vote for Trump regardless.
That's
so
true.
I guess he's right.
Well, and right-wing Jews will vote for any Republican, and he has delivered for them in terms of their fevered dreams regarding Israel, and it's a problem, folks. It's total coincidence. I woke up this morning. I'm like, maybe I should shave. Generally, I don't like to start off the week by shaving for no reason. But Harry's makes it so pleasant that on a rare occasion, I will shave without reason. I'm not going to get sucked into shaving on a regular daily basis. But and the best thing about Harry's, great gift. I mean, this is like a gift that I would, if my kids got me a Harry's razor, I would be like, I would be shocked and impressed. I mean, I like it when they do a drawing for me and this and that, but, and here's the good news for you, our listeners. Listeners of my show can get $5 off of any Harry's shave set by heading to harrys.com/majority report. Free shipping ends on December 16th, so you got to get there quick. This is a practical gift that, well, he or she, frankly, will use. It's with German-engineered, award-winning blades that last. They're all backed by a 100% quality guarantee. The holiday sets start at just $20. That's within Secret Santa limits. This is a good deal. I forgot about that. People at offices have Secret Santas all the time, right? This is no white elephant, as they say. Harry's blade refills are as low as $2 each, so your guy or gal will save money over time as well. I've told you a million times what my favorite aspects of my Harry's razor is. One, I love the cool sort of chrome, I don't know, classic, simple, almost postmodern handle. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Mid-century modern, not postmodern. And I also, because of my nasal cavities, appreciate the trimmer blade. Those are my favorite aspects of it. Although I also love the Harry's shave cream. And as a special offer for the fans of the show, we've partnered with Harry's to give you $5 off any shave set, including their limited edition holiday sets. When you go to harrys.com/majority report. Plus, of course, you get free shipping. Each Harry's shaving set comes with a weighted handle with the option to engrave. Nice. 5-blade razor cartridges, foaming shave gel for a richer lather, travel cover to protect your blades, and it's packaged in a handsome holiday gift box. Free shipping ends on December 16th, so act now. Just go to harrys.com/majority report. That's harrys.com/majority report. Check it out. And while we're on my daily uses of hygiene and products, it's nice. I come into work. I'm like, I don't know what ads we're going to have. And it's a nice feeling to say, like, I just used this stuff 4 hours ago or whatever.
It was on a toothbrushing day for you?
Exactly. Once a week I shave. Once a week I brush my teeth.
Don't like to do it earlier in the week.
Usually I try to wait until when. No, of course not. I've been on a big, I think everybody knows I've been on a big, and when you get older, that's what happens. You got to brush your teeth more because you're trying to make up for the fact that you didn't do it as well as you should have when you were younger. That's basically it. Don't you make that same mistake, folks. If there's one thing that you've gotten from the 10 years of me doing this show, it is the need for dental hygiene. But this also makes for a great gift. I'm talking about Quip. Quip is something that's sure to put a smile on everyone's face because it's dental care people actually want to use every day. I gave my sister a Quip. I think it was for Hanukkah last year. And I got an unsolicited response from her dentist. Not directly, but through her. He said, I like what you're doing. She said it was with the Quip. He said, tell your brother. Good job. That is a true story, folks. Quip's electric toothbrush, reliable, refillable floss, and toothpaste are all intentionally designed to make good habits simple. The electric toothbrush has a sensitive sonic vibrations with a timer with 30-second pulses to guide your routine, and the Quip floss dispenser. Wait, what? I got to get on that.
I haven't heard of that.
Can Quip convince me to floss regularly?
I'm telling you, that is exactly it. Because the whole thing about dental hygiene is doing it on a regular basis. And the toothbrush has made it so much easier for me to maintain, like, I'm almost at 3 times a day now. Yes. They send refills, toothpaste refills, and recharge for the Quip and a new Quip head every 3 months. And that's why Quip is the perfect gift. You can join over 3 million happy customers. Check everyone off your list right now with Quip. It's also, it's an attractive design. And it's not huge and bulky. You can actually fit it in most of the traditional toothbrush holders that you stick on your sink. And particularly when you're living in a city, you got like the little pedestal sink and everything's falling off. You don't want one of those big monster things on there. And then you end up not using it, and then you don't. And that's what's so fantastic about Quip. It's something I use every day, multiple times a day, because it's easy. And I can travel with it, so I don't break the habit of using an electric toothbrush. Go to getquip.com/majority. Save on gift sets and get your first refill pack free with a refill plan. That's your first refill free at GetQuip. QUIP. GETQUIP.com/majority. GetQuip.com/majority. And lastly, a VPN protects your privacy and security online, but will also take your TV watching to the next level. Oh, I didn't know that we could talk about this. But this is the off-label use. But I've been using this for a long time. Look, people don't realize this. Netflix, other services, they offer different things in different countries. But when they see that your IP address comes from the States, you don't get it. Sometimes when you're on certain streaming services and you want a sports game and they say, hey, you're blacked out because you're living in the area, we can tell by your IP address.
It's just tough in New York City because there's 2 teams per major sport, and those games are always blacked out on like League Pass, for instance.
Yeah, but I don't watch those. I'm a Boston fan, and there's times when that happens.
Oh, well.
Oh, I'm sorry, League Pass.
Yes.
I have ExpressVPN.
With ExpressVPN, you can binge shows like Doctor Who on UK Netflix. You just use ExpressVPN app to change your location to UK. What? ExpressVPN hides your IP address and lets you control where you want sites to think you're located. You can choose from almost 100 different countries. That's a lot of different Netflix libraries, even Japanese Netflix. This is serious. But it's not just Netflix. ExpressVPN works with any streaming service. Hulu, BBC iPlayer, YouTube. YouTube. I had no idea they worked with YouTube TV.
It's like a cultural passport.
Oh, man. I had no idea. I would never do that. And more. ExpressVPN is ridiculously fast. There's never any buffering or lag. You can stream HD, no problem. ExpressVPN is also compatible with all your devices, phones, media consoles, smart TVs, and more. I mean, look, it protects your privacy and your security online, but this is the game winner for me. Visit expressvpn.com/majority to get an extra 3 months of ExpressVPN for free. Support the show. Watch what you want. Protect yourself. expressvpn.com/majority. All right, let's get into the rest of this. We'll start off at the impeachment. We'll get to that graph in a minute. But there was, I got to dig more into that. But the polling is out, and impeachment in no way is hurting the Democrats. If anything, it's helping slightly from a political standpoint. There was an attempt by this, you know what? I wanted to pull this and we don't have it. I think maybe we pulled it last time by this guy, Pasquale. He is, Brad Pasquale or something to that effect. I think he's Trump's campaign manager. And he was talking about I think it was an Oklahoma Democrat. I can't remember her name off the top of my head now. And he was trying to show polling that impeachment was hurting her. Impeachment was actually rating better in her district than she was. And everybody on Twitter who follows this guy, who are campaign professionals, are going, dude, what are you doing? You just tweeted out internals that show that impeachment's helping her. But nevertheless, this narrative remains. We'll talk more about it in a moment. But here is Steve Castor. Like I say, to really get the gist of what the Democrats presented today, you need to watch the whole thing. To get the gist of what the Republicans were doing, you basically, and we could play some random attempt to interrupt the proceedings. Oh, we should also play the InfoWars guy. Let's find that as well. But here is Steve Castor. He is the attorney for the Republicans showing up at the hearings for some reason with, is that a Whole Foods bag? Let's see what it is. Or is it a Price Chopper? It looks like maybe it's a Hannaford. I've gone... No, come on.
Is that his lunch?
Come on. Are we to believe that this guy's showing up with that? I don't buy it. I really don't buy it. That's a show.
Like Republicans are the briefcase boys.
Yeah, but now he's trying to show we're like every
man of the people.
We're lunchbox guys. We're lunchbox guys.
Well, that's just weird. That's just like a bag from a grocery store. Like,
Well,
He should have showed up with like a Craftsman.
I'm not a
hardware tool.
Well, his whole shtick is I'm just a country lawyer, and I'm not somebody's.
I remember when I forgot my first Hannaford's bag for a Genovese family case that I was working on behalf.
In fact, let's play clip number 2
of the Ukrainian.
I'm going to try and explain it to you so you can understand it. Yeah, Joe's got malarkey, but I got something better.
Be presenting, but again, thanks for having me. The purpose of this hearing, as we understand it, is to discuss whether President Donald J. Trump's conduct fits the definition of a high crime and misdemeanor. It does not. Such that the committee should consider articles of impeachment to remove the president from office, and it should not. This case, in many respects, comes down to 8 lines in a call transcript. Let me say clearly and unequivocally that the answer to that question is no. The record in the Democrats' impeachment inquiry does not show that President Trump abused the power of his office or obstructed Congress. To impeach a president who 63 million people voted for over 8 lines in a call transcript is baloney.
There you go. It's baloney. Now,
wouldn't it be great if he pulled some actual baloney out of the grocery bag to illustrate that point?
He should have had props.
He totally
I
should have
thought he
done
was
that.
going with that.
It's mortadella.
And I'm going to make Swiss cheese out of this testimony.
There is not anything that he did in that presentation. He spoke for 45 minutes, and about, I would say, about 5 minutes was actually even fact-based. Everything was like that. Look, if the 8 lines said, I murdered somebody, well, you don't even need 8 lines. Right? The number of lines in that transcript, and of course it's not about the transcript. They had over a dozen witnesses who came in and testified about something that was far greater than that. That was just the first piece of evidence that made it clear there's something wrong here. That was just the first thing that triggered the investigations from the whistleblower. The whistleblower report and the subsequent launching of a House Intelligence Committee investigation were what got Donald Trump to release the aid. But that clip is what you're going to see on Fox News tonight, if you haven't seen it already. They just needed stuff to present for their alt narrative. And they got it. They got it. Do we have the InfoWars guy? This could not be more apropos of what's going on with the Republican Party. There was a protest by a young man whose name was Owen Schroyer. Owen is Alex Jones's sidekick. Nothing could be more appropriate than hear from this guy defending the president the day after the New York Times releases its piece written by a former producer at InfoWars telling the story about how they made stuff up at that show on a regular basis. Also, that it turns out that it appears, according to this story, that Alex Jones is a lunatic who has a massive drinking problem and is basically, sort of like has a sort of the very abusive. I'm going to be looking at it for managerial tips, actually, around these parts.
Oh, you don't need to.
Tomorrow's news today.
There you go. But here is Owen Schroyer interrupting the beginning proceedings of the impeachment hearing. Perfect person to do this. It's perfectly consistent with the Republican perspective on all of this.
Order in the
Trump is innocent.
Exactly. Thank you.
The only thing I would tell you is that guy was dressed impeccably, and that I think is, clean for Gene. I think that's a good move. Beyond that, I would say no. Here's Trump's approval rating under impeachment. Like I say, we know that in terms of House members who have voted for this, impeachment appears, at least according, if we're to believe Trump's campaign manager accidentally, that it is in many places actually doing better than the actual Democratic candidates who are looking to win re-election. But here is, you can see where do you support or oppose impeaching Donald Trump? Basically, these trend lines flipped when Pelosi announced the impeachment and have basically remained more or less static.
I'm surprised Amash's call. I mean, maybe not surprised, but that seemed to move the needle a little bit. I mean, maybe combined with Warren and the end of the Mueller investigation.
Yeah, I think when Amash did, it basically said, like, this is, I mean, that is the value of even one person coming out and saying it. It pierces a certain bubble. Now, it would have been more effective if he remained a Republican, but he had his own brand to have to deal with. You'll recall the Mueller testimony happened after Amash called for impeachment.
Do they break it down by party as well?
They do in the civics thing. And it is split, I think, in terms of independence. This is from the civics, CIVIQS poll. Let's see here. I'll go to parties.
It's like, if I had to guess, I'd say that it breaks down along roughly partisan lines.
Well, yes. And independents are largely split. You have all respondents, 51% oppose. In terms of, let's see if I can get these. Okay, so subgroups. Republicans, 92% oppose. Younger people, slightly different in terms of Republicans, but for the most part, no. Democrat, 91% of Democrats support. Non-college graduate, college graduate, more or less the same. Everybody right up there. Independents, more or less statistically the same. 47 support, 48 oppose. We know that right-leaning people identify as independent more often than not. But young independents, 58%, 18 to 34, 35 to 49, 48% support. So it's older folks on the independent side. But yeah, this is, we're in a very polarized time. And I suspect that most of the people who vote for Republican are going to be, for Donald Trump, are going to be Republican. Most who vote for whoever the Democrat is are going to be Democrats. And then you're going to see a split. But the point is that what we don't know is the counterfactual. What's going on if we're not impeaching? Would we be having a more vigorous debate about healthcare in this country? Who would be leading this debate? The impeachment hearings have basically freed up candidates on the campaign trail to not talk about impeachment because it's happening. They don't have to call for it because there's obviously a clear desire by Democratic voters to impeach this guy. That's why it happened in the first place. But now the presidential campaigns don't have to talk about it. I do think there's a liability for progressives in the event that impeachment happens in January. You're not going to be able to, if you're Bernie or Warren, be on the ground in Iowa. It's not clear that it's 100% sure that it's going to happen in January, but I would say it's pretty close to being 100%. But who knows? Personally, I would keep it going for a longer period of time. But, I don't know why they wouldn't, frankly. And
you need to widen the scope to keep it going.
Yeah,
longer,
I've heard some theories that supposedly they're trying to make it look like it's going forward quickly, and they're actually waiting for the financials to come through the court system, because there have been courts that have ruled that his financial stuff should be released. I don't buy that theory. You don't need to have this on Monday. You have it on Friday. Nobody was clamoring, well, we need this on the first day of the week at 9 a.m. I just don't think that's the strategy, but who knows? But nevertheless, the net, and I would also argue that if we were not impeaching Donald Trump right now, all of the stuff that Rudy Giuliani was digging up about 2016, about the Bidens, it could be about, for all I know, they could have brought in other people. They would be building a case right now and dumping it. I mean, who's to say that Bill Barr's investigators, who are going to be, some of whom are going to be releasing a report today, particularly the special the prosecutor he appointed, and I don't know when he's supposed to release his report. We were supposedly going to get it now, but it's been delayed. Who's to say that that guy wouldn't have felt more pressure based upon everything that's been revealed as, I mean, these they're all counterfactuals, but something would be going on. And I do not know what that something would be, but if I had to guess, it would be Donald Trump driving the narrative, as opposed to what we see now, where Donald Trump is on his heels. And that has to be a good thing, it seems to me.
No doubt. And by the way, on the flip side, there's no positive scenario for Joe Biden having his kid do this. So, I mean, it answers some concerns on the left, which I think are valid, about this distracting from bigger issues. But then on the other hand, it's like, yeah, the best case scenario of neutralizing the Biden story is an impeachment process, because it's a bad story.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Yeah, I understand why they need to do this, and I understand why it would be much worse if they didn't, probably. I mean, it's hard to prove a counterfactual,
right.
But yeah, but it is still a little bit hard for progressives to get excited about something that may help Democrats slightly and may stave off something way worse from happening in our political landscape, But I get it.
I'm progressive. I'm pretty excited about it, but I can understand why some people, it's just not their bag.
The outcome is that something way worse didn't happen versus.
Well, and I would also argue that it's going to be very, very helpful in the context of the Senate. I mean, it is, if the Democrats take the Senate, unless they take it by sort of like ungodly, surprising margins, I think it's going to be quite clear that this impeachment vote, it's Susan Collins, where there is 60% desire, maybe more, to impeach Donald Trump in Maine, for instance. I mean, if you just go down the list. In fact, here, this has...
She in particular is screwed.
Well, I mean, she is in particular.
Really
but, for instance, in Georgia, 55% support impeachment.
Georgia's a lean blue state without voter suppression.
Now, that is why Collins was not made the acting senator. Like, they don't want anybody in Congress who's gonna, they're gonna have to have a new senator. She's gonna go in there and she's gonna take that vote. I'm sorry, wait, that's independent. I believe it's 50-50. Hold on one second. Apologies. That did seem a little bit.
But you mean 60% among independents? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's 55% among independents in Georgia, but let me give you the...
what's the full state total?
The full state total. Let's see.
Just a quick note while you're looking that up. The Iowa caucus is February 3rd.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yep. So it's a little bit... I'm sorry. Yeah, so it's closer to 50-50. In Georgia, 48 support, 49 oppose. But those independents, as I said, 55%, but still 50-50 on impeachment is exactly the type of person who doesn't want to make that vote. Because it's clear that it's not driving. Voting against impeachment is not going to drive voters out on your side, on the Republican side. Who is it going to piss off is the question. That's Georgia. Let's look at, where else do we have this? Maine. 62% support impeachment. What's Susan Collins going to do? Let's look at North Carolina. Again, 48% support, 49% oppose. That is a very scary place for Tom Tillis to be in.
Well, we all know they're going to not. It would be truly stunning if any of them voted to actually remove him from office. I don't anticipate any of that. What I think...
Colorado, 55% support impeachment.
So what we already know, we're just going to go in general, and they're going to see how effective it is. Right? Like, we already know the answer to that. None of them are going to vote to remove him from office. I think it is more likely that Mitch McConnell would attempt to, as Kevin Cruz was making this point on Mehdi Hassan's show, that, McConnell would try to have a sit down with Trump. That's obviously not going to happen either. So,
and get him to release a couple of people.
Yeah,
Yes.
It's not going to happen.
No.
So, we're going to go into a general. All these people are going to vote against it. And maybe the idea is it just, it's in the back of people's heads. Who knows?
Well, if I'm running against Susan Collins, I'm going to do an ad where I morph Susan Collins' face into Donald Trump.
Oh, you would do that.
How many Republicans are there like that, though?
I think there's at least a half a dozen in the Senate. I've just gone through 3 or 4, but I would also say Cory Gardner. I would also say, was it Sally McAdams? I always get her name wrong. I don't know why. I make up an entire name for her.
I don't know what her real name is.
I don't think I have any idea. Somebody's got to correct me every time I keep doing it wrong. She's in Arizona. But Joni Ernst, also, Tom Tillis. I think there's, in Georgia, you've got 2 of them running for re-election.
I think, though, in order for them to pay in those states like that, you need a lot of other things to be going right.
Absolutely.
A lot of, with the exception, Collins is pulling off a balancing act that I don't think she can anymore. Because, if she even, number one, she's proven that for all of her supposed moderation, she really is a Republican operative. And that's, I think, really who she is. And
she's a Republican elected leader. It's Martha McSally.
Well, of course she's a Republican elected leader, but people like Lincoln Chafee was a Republican elected leader. He was not a Republican. She has a clear commitment to the Republican Party winning in a way that a lot of people were, I don't think, understood correctly.
You mean she's almost as committed to the project as Joe Biden?
Yeah, exactly. But if she does anything, Lepage will primary her and destroy her. That's the thing with Maine, is that Maine is particularly weird because it's legitimately a slightly blue state. But it's not like the rest of the New England Republican Party, which doesn't send people nationally anymore, but can still elect these random Republicans that don't exist anywhere else in the country to be governors in Vermont or Massachusetts. It's not only hard right, I would say it's anticipatory hard right. Lepage is one of the people you could look at to anticipate Trump on a very personal and stylistic level.
But that's where we are on impeachment. We will see going forward.
I would also just add, you think about, let's say the best case scenario, Bernie wins the primary, or at least is really well positioned to win it. I think it's good to have this sort of thing going on, because it's going to give the people who might stay home, they're not going to stay home against Bernie when there's an impeachment going on, right? They're going to want to give anybody the senators, regardless of who's the top of the ticket. So as far as disciplining centrists who might, donut people who might not like Bernie as the nominee, I think all this stuff is good for that.
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, there's no negatives that I can come up with here other than if it happens in January, it's going to sideline, it's going to keep Warren and Sanders in Washington instead of Iowa. And that may benefit Sanders more, frankly, than Warren, because he's been there already. Like he's probably met 85% of the state at this point.
He also has
from
more powerful
2016.
surrogate game.
And so, but who knows? But that's the only downside I can see. And that's still hypothetical. We don't know when this trial is going to happen, and we don't know how long it's going to be in the Senate. I mean, the longer it plays out, I would imagine, the more painful it is for some of these Republicans. John Roberts is supposedly going to run the whole thing, so we will see. But we'll have a better notion of that in some time. Let's turn to, let's take a quick break and let's do one. We'll do one Mayor Pete. And then I was stunned by this. And have they issued, let's just be fair about this. Have they issued some type of correction on this? Where Mayor Pete is Mayor Pete. Pete Buttigieg.
His name is Mayo Pete. Get it right.
It's Mayo Pete. And also, I like, forgetting her name, but a host on The Real News pointed out, she said that mostly, like, it's fake affectionate and just, it's Buttigieg. You could figure out how to pronounce his last name.
Right.
We don't need to
Buttigieg.
play into this nonsense.
Buttigieg.
Pete Buttigieg.
And so Pete Buttigieg, small town mayor Pete Buttigieg, small town mayor. Have they come out, just to be fair, have they issued any type of, like, he didn't hear what he said, or he never listens to anybody when he actually pretends like he is? Because he's asked about getting big money out of politics and really just offers a decided, sort of, maybe he's just taking this from Joe Biden. I mean, where it's like, well, you're going to want to vote for somebody else if you don't want money corrupting politics. Now, to be fair, he is in the midst of a quasi scandal that seems to be brewing. He will not allow anybody into any of his fundraisers to report. Now, everybody has done this on some measure or another. I mean, of course, Bernie doesn't hold these big fundraisers, so reporters aren't as interested in going probably. But you get these big donor fundraisers. Warren's not doing that either, though, of course, she did as a senator and transferred some of that money, but they're not ongoing. Biden is doing these big money fundraisers, and apparently he allows one reporter in who functions as sort of a pool reporter. Buttigieg, it's like I don't know, sort of CIA level security in terms of getting in there. And maybe that's why he's decided the best thing for me to do is just to be unabashed about it. So when someone asks if I'm going to get money out of politics, this is the way I respond. Now, people can look at this and see if he's actually listening or not, or just he's really good at pretending he's listening. I don't know, but play this. I want to ask you if you think that taking big money out of politics includes not taking money off of billionaires and closed doors fundraisers. And he says no. There it is.
A moment of honesty.
Yeah. Nope. I'm not taking big money out of, let's play that again. Taking big money out of politics does not include not taking monies from billionaires or closed door fundraisers with other billionaires and millionaires.
What does it include then?
He seemed pretty happy about the answer, though.
If I was going to do spin for them, I would say he heard the question exactly opposite.
Yeah.
Right. Do you, what's that? What?
Like, do you accept money? I mean, I guess he does, so he can't.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
I'd be curious as to what the spin is on that. We have him responding.
He's not divisive. Honestly, that's his point.
Well, there you go, folks. All right, we're going to take a quick break. head into the fun half. Just a reminder, this show relies on you. You. Its listeners for its support. You can support this program by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. When you go there, you can do a one-off donation if you want there now. We fixed that. Yeah. You can sign up. You can gift things. People have got to, I don't know, whoever owns Cuck Nation's got to redirect that. But you can go to jointhemajorityreport.com. You can give a gift of the Majority Report. The whole system takes care of it. Super easy. Again, if you're one of those folks who wants the fun half, but you don't have the means, send us an email, majorityreporters@gmail.com. You got to wait a little bit, but we will get there to you, I promise. Also, remember, we give you you support the free show. We give it to you without commercials, and you get the fun half as well. And we've got a lot of fun stuff. Oh, don't forget, send us your best of recommendations, your questions about memes, and what was the last thing that we had? Oh, your charity suggestions. So if you're sending us a best of, put best of in the subject line. If you're sending us a question about memes, send us the question with a memes in the subject line. And if you have a charity suggestion, send us one that says charity in the subject line. And don't forget, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, you get 10% off. But right now at Just Coffee, I believe they still have, for a couple more days, they're 30% off. So you don't even need the coupon. I'm not sure about that. Yes, it's the 30% off right now, I think. Is it still going on? Well, check it out. Try the Majority Report coupon, but it's a great time to go in and enjoy some Just Coffee. You're going to love it, folks. Great company, fair trade, co-op owned. They support their farmers. It really is an amazing place, and the coffee is terrific. Also, don't forget, sign up for the AM Quickie, amquickie.com. Michael, today is Monday. Tomorrow must be Tuesday.
Indeed. On tomorrow's show, we're doing a stream at 6 with Camille from Telesur to talk about new OAS report on Dominica and the ongoing coup in Bolivia. Then for the 7 o'clock main show, Chris Nineham is joining us to talk about prospects for the Corbyn project, both basically in the last 48 hours of the election in the UK, and then in multiple scenarios that might occur afterwards, and how to make climate change not become harnessed by the right. Marissa Baradaran is also going to be returning to the show and talking about the bigger picture of impeachment and executive power. Patreon.com/TMBS. Get all of the Sunday shows and post games, and grab your tickets to the Bell House February 7th live show with Alona and Harvey and a bunch of other people. Matt Binder.
Oh.
Pretty Bad Lefty, Brandon Sutton, on the majority.fm homepage.
Folks, we'll talk more about this in the fun half, but it's now the Inspector General report is made public. Apparently, it has not been made public yet, but apparently Richard Blumenthal has reviewed it, and it says it demolishes some of the conservatives' assertions of the origins of the probe, though his investigators did find some problems, which I would imagine is always the case. But we will see. It'll be released later today. Sorry, go ahead. Jamie.
Oh, this week on the Antifada, Sean KB speaks with Do Not Eat, who is a socialist YouTuber who focuses on public transit, about the film Who Framed Roger Rabbit and what it says about public transit and how public transit fits into socialism more generally. Also, I'm really excited. We have an episode coming out on Wednesday with Alex Vitale, author of The End of Policing. He wrote a great book, which is out now on Verso, about the history of the modern police state and how it's failed on basically every friend, or succeeded if you recognize its true purpose as being oppressing the populace. But he's so good. He's done so much good work on this stuff, and I'm really excited for you guys to hear it. So patreon.com/theantifada.
Literary Hangover, we did that play everyone read in elementary or middle school, Arthur Miller's The Crucible, and we talk about how that Salem witch trials story, what that has to bear on the House Un-American Activities Committee and Marilyn Monroe, so check that out.
All right, folks. Quick break. Fun half. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous. You're a little bit upset. You're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
That's some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 8s. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Rand Paul.
I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're not paying.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agreed.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way. Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up.
Ooh.
Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up.
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
welcome back. Now, I haven't. A story broke this morning, I guess. And I haven't had a chance to read too far into these. But back in 2014, the Office of Special Investigator General for the Afghanistan Reconstruction, SIGAR, I guess they call it, SIGAR, started doing interviews. I think they did about 400 interviews, is it? Maybe more. Of interviews of basically key players, 400 officials who were key players in the war in Afghanistan, not necessarily the initiation of it, but the ongoing war, the attempts at, to the extent that we have any, reconstruction over the course of the 18-year war that we're in. And the results were not good. They were bad. Here is this is the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Miley. And this was
a month ago.
Only a month ago. This was, November 10th, 2019. Here is the Joint Chief of the Joint Chiefs of Staff telling Martha McSally, we've only just begun.
I want to move to Afghanistan. We have been in Afghanistan more than 18 years. What would you say to someone who is 18 years old, who, male or female, may end up serving in a war that began before they were born?
Well, I think we have to go back to the original reason why we are in Afghanistan to begin with, which is 9/11. So we went there in order to make sure that Afghanistan never again would be a safe haven to terrorists that would attack the United States. That mission is not yet complete. And in order for that mission to be successful, the government of Afghanistan, the Afghan security forces are going to have to be able to sustain their own internal security to prevent terrorists from using their territory to attack other countries, especially the United States. That effort's ongoing. It's been ongoing for 18 consecutive years. I suspect it'll be ongoing into the future for several more years.
And when you say that, and that we're going to be there that long, that makes me think we'll be there that long in Iraq, in Syria, wherever the Islamic State is.
I think that it's not just the Islamic State, it's other groups, but I think that we will be there for a significant amount of time because it's in our national interest to be there.
I mean, it's not working, right? I mean, it's not, what we're basically doing is permanent occupation. And the late John McCain, this was what he was calling for back in 2008. And after he would say, how long, the question would be, how long do we need to stay in these countries? And he's going, well, we've been in Japan for 70 years now. More. And that was his response. We've been in Germany for 70 some odd years now, 80 years. That was his response. And this, these new Afghan papers, which are really, again, a compilation put together by the Inspector General of the Office for the Afghanistan Reconstruction, 400 plus interviews. And the transcripts of the interviews have been published by the Washington Post after a 3-year legal battle. This was a lessons learned project. And the irony of this is, of course, none of the lessons have been learned. This is simply a compilation of the lessons, but nobody's learned them. The war has cost at least $1 trillion. At least $1 trillion. That's the official figure, $1 trillion. There's no doubt in my mind it's more. And the way that they measure this, you're not looking at like what it means in terms of the VA, et cetera, et cetera. It killed more than 2,300 U.S. servicemen and women. And the thing is, none of these stories, 20,000 injured, I'm not even sure what the official count is for how many Afghanis we've killed. Tens of thousands, certainly.
Oh, that's conservative.
And that's conservative. And thousands upon thousands of innocent civilians.
Also in Pakistan. I mean, even just as a side note of things they don't account for, they're not even talking about like the environmental damage of base construction and refueling stops through Pakistan and how that disrupts, entire cities.
I mean, and not to mention things like, I mean, it's a separate thing. It's obviously bad, but it's the CIA plan to have fake NGOs, proposes fake NGOs giving people vaccinations and what that has led to. But apparently the head of SIGAR, this is the Inspector General of the Afghanistan Reconstruction, this guy, John Sopko, told the newspaper that the assessments contained in the project And again, this is not a leak, right? They got them from legal measures, but I think at that point the guy wants to, make an assessment. I think, he's part of this endeavor. The project suggested that, quote, the American people have constantly, I should say, been lied to. Mm-hmm. The two major claims in the documents are that U.S. officials manipulated statistics to suggest to the American public that the war was being won, and successive administrations turned a blind eye to widespread corruption among Afghan officials, allowing the theft of U.S. aid with impunity. This is almost identical, at least broad terms, as to what the Pentagon Papers showed, which was that, no, the American public was not getting the truth as to the efficacy or the winning of the war. And also, it hid the fact that even our allies didn't want us there, and they were not prepared to fight. At least I should say, to fight or to fight as we were suggesting they were fighting. They weren't on board with this project to destroy their country.
Right.
Like I say, I haven't read through these. You can go to the Washington Post and read through a vast majority, at least of highlights of these, as far as I can tell. Here's one, though, in a write-up from The Guardian. A guy named Douglas Lute, he's a lieutenant general, who served as the White House Afghan war czar during the Bush and Obama administrations, told interviewers in 2015, we were devoid of a fundamental understanding of Afghanistan. We didn't know what we were doing. Remember, Obama ran in 2008 on pulling out of Iraq, but beefing up Afghanistan. He was very explicit about that. People tend to forget. I think he called for, during the campaign, up to 30,000 more troops in Afghanistan to finish the job. And apparently they were feeling very pressured to make it look like we had finished the job in Afghanistan, whatever that means. I can tell you this, that as a comedian in 2003, where my only credentials were that I had been booked to direct I'm with Busey on Comedy Central, I went on radio for the first time, got a couple hours on WFMU. And at that time, I certainly didn't know this. It must have been reported, but it was always reported on page like 17 of the paper. The first other 17 pages were all about why we should go to war. But somewhere deep in some of these papers, maybe it was McClatchy, I'm not sure, it was quite clear that we were going to spend trillions of dollars on Iraq and Afghanistan back in 2002, early 2003. And that in Afghanistan, there was no hope for us to do anything. At that time, it was the war in Afghanistan with the Soviet Union was fresh enough on people's memories where they realized, like, there's no winning there.
Oh, yeah. It's referred to sometimes as the Soviet Union's Vietnam. And our war in Afghanistan has lasted almost 10 years longer than that.
That's right.
Just to add a few snippets to it, I mean, we remember like different stories would break. I remember there was one during the Obama administration about how the Pentagon was using, I think it was called the Rendon Group, to do information management on specific journalists to massage their perception of the war. There's reports daily which get no attention of like, oh yeah, we just bombed a wedding party in Afghanistan. And related to the consistent dishonesty about this, I mean, if you read Ghost Wars and Directorate S, which are the Steve Cole, like, definitive histories of both sides of this from 79 through like 2016, to the extent to which there's any legitimacy to what he's talking about these omnipresent security threats, it comes through the relationship between our intelligence services and the Pakistani and the Saudi ones. And that has been like, not just amplified, like it's an ongoing operative relationship, even with every type of countervailing evidence, and on both sides, like us going in and violating Pakistan's sovereignty and killing civilians, and them playing a double game with every single terrorist operation imaginable, even as there's still no deal with the Taliban. And I think it's just, the war on terrorism is the framework for how we do foreign policy since Bush. And that's why these things are perpetual, like McCain wanted.
Jeffrey Egger is a retired Navy SEAL and White House staffer for Bush and Obama. And some of these guys have a very sort of like, consumer perspective on these things. Mm-hmm. What do we get for this $1 trillion effort? Was it worth $1 trillion? After the killing of Osama bin Laden, I said that Osama was probably laughing in his watery grave, considering how much we've spent in Afghanistan. Now, that is what bin Laden was trying to do. He knew that
That's what he said.
He knew. Within days after 9/11, or excuse me, days before 9/11, bin Laden assassinated one of the top leaders of the Northern Alliance,
Massoud,
and did so in anticipation of the possibility that we could invade, or maybe in anticipation of us relying on Massoud and those Northern Alliance forces to do the bulk of the fighting. But it's true. Bin Laden couldn't have imagined, particularly with Iraq, couldn't have imagined a better scenario. However, on top of the fact that Afghanistan, the prolonged involvement there, and look, there's no reason to believe that, they only did this for Afghanistan. They wouldn't do it for Iraq. Aside from the failure on a policy level that was pursued in these instances, aside from the fact that it was ill-conceived, probably ill-executed, Bob Crowley, an Army colonel who served as senior counterinsurgency advisor to U.S. military commanders in 2013 and 2014. This is the time of that, probably in the retrospect of that so-called surge, which happened, I think it was in 2011 in Afghanistan. Every data point was altered to present the best picture possible. Surveys, for instance, as you mentioned, Michael, were totally unreliable, but reinforced that everything we were doing was right, and we became a self-licking ice cream cone. And
it's like the military's best invention.
Only 62 of the people interviewed were identified. 366 other names were redacted after Saigar insisted that they be treated as whistleblowers and informants.
And then the whole other thing of the taking the idea, the whole Petraeus, that what he did in Iraq was like basically smartly cut a whole bunch of financial deals with different tribal leadership and try to sort of like slightly improve their situation.
These were Sunni in the west of the country,
right.
And they were concerned because they had all lost their jobs because Saddam Hussein had them all on the payroll,
and that was doctrinization after the invasion.
There was a lot of former military personnel, and basically Petraeus made it look like we're going to bring in a bunch of troops, and really what they did is they brought in a bunch of suitcases of cash, and they bought them off, which frankly,
that was good.
Might be a good recipe for
what I'm trying to say. It was like that whole thing was mythologized as a troop surge. It was the bag of cash surge that made it effective.
Fine.
And then they lied that they could basically replicate it in Afghanistan with very different dynamics.
Yep.
And frankly, the last thing, just two quick things. I mean, Obama was essentially, look, he understood that it was over. And he made a Machiavellian calculation to surge those troops. I have no doubt. He understood.
His trade-off was,
bureaucracy
this is how I'm going to get out of Iraq.
This is how I'll get out of Iraq, and this will maybe even long-term get out of Afghanistan. But he made that calculation, and he was boxed in by the military, but he knew, and Clinton was very hawkish. And then the last thing is, my God, props to Barbara Lee. the only person in the entirety of the Congress to vote against the authorization of military force weeks after the September 11th attacks. And that is
ballsy.
Unbelievably ballsy, and nothing but kudos to her.
And are we still under that AUMF?
Yes. That's the one AUMF that every couple of years it's Barbara Lee's still the one leaning to trying to change it. And I believe there's even Tim Kaine did some work in the Senate, but no, it's still the one. And it's still the one not only we're operating off of, it's still the one that a couple of months ago Pompeo said we could attack Iran using.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's see what else we have here. There's a fight brewing. I know there's not a lot to say about it right now. Nancy Pelosi has a drug bill, prescription drug bill, and actually, it might be a good thing if people want to empower. I mean, look, what's interesting about this is that it shows you, look, obviously this drug bill, I don't think this is going to get signed under any, I just think it's unlikely it's going to get signed. But it shows you the relevance of these bills being passed in a democratically controlled Congress, because it sets the tone. It gets momentum. It means that it's that much closer to being legislation. This is a bill that will allow the Secretary of Health and Human Services to negotiate lower prices for a minimum of 35 drugs per year, up to a maximum of 250 drugs per year. So Bernie Sanders or Pete Buttigieg or Elizabeth Warren's, Joe Biden's Health and Human Services director could go and choose 35, EpiPens. We're going to do, or insulin, or we're going to negotiate with these drugs and get them lower. It would save supposedly about $350 billion over 7 years. However, progressives have offered an amendment to that bill. Pramila Jayapal offered it. It passed in committee, and it would increase the number of drugs that can be negotiated, as well as extending lower drug prices to people who are uninsured. And it would fully repeal the current ban on Medicare negotiating prices. We don't have the power of a buyer of drugs or a payer of drugs who's paying for 45 million Americans, maybe more, and they can't bulk negotiate.
The free market, folks.
It'd be socialism if we allowed them to.
That's right.
Markets decide prices.
And I need to make sure that you guys don't get totally wiped out.
Good to call
so
your
nothing like that happens.
Good to call your congressperson and say, your Democratic congressperson, and say, I want Pramila Jayapal's amendment in that drug bill. I mean, if the progressive caucus is, and they are far more aggressive than we've seen in the past from the progressive caucus. But if they're to gain any power, it has to come from people calling their congresspeople. Super important. Get on it. Look it up. You can find it anywhere. We'll put the we'll put it in this description of this this video and on YouTube and on the podcast. Call your congresspeople. Support Pramila Jayapal's amendment to the drug bill. That's all you need to say. I wouldn't normally cover this, but for it's being reported in such a way that I think is highly problematic. Elizabeth Warren, and I don't, again, to the extent that I have any criticism about this, it's just her campaign people are creating stories. It just goes to, I think, more, I understand the desire for, transparency and whatnot. And
it's because they're going at Pete over this.
Yes.
They should just say, screw you, we win.
Right.
Like
right.
that's all you need to do. You're running for president.
But they've been transparent about her work that she did as basically a law professor, as a lawyer, over the course of past 20 years. Over that time, she made just under $2 million. Well, I guess it's 3 decades. So it was over 30 years or so, just under $2 million. It comes out to about $65,000, $67,000 a year. It's not a huge amount of money for the top bankruptcy expert in the country. I think it comes out to about an hourly rate of $200. Those are not New York lawyer prices, I can tell you. It's significantly higher than that now. Even at the time, $200, probably in the 90s, late 80s, was not that much, at least in New York. All I've seen so far, somebody pulled $400,000 worth of this stuff out of that $2 million. It's not all there. Some of it is client privilege, attorney-client privilege. You're not allowed to release it as a lawyer. She worked in a case, Bolin versus Sears Roebuck. She served as an expert witness who testified that Sears' debt collection practices violated bankruptcy laws. And she got paid $100,000, I think, in that case. That was obviously, she was testifying in favor of the consumers. Price versus Philip Morris. These are all class action suits, incidentally. And there's an intersection here between when class action suits happen and a company goes into bankruptcy. And she's brought in to testify what bankruptcy laws apply in these situations and what are creditors deserving. So she's only speaking from the bankruptcy standpoint. She served as an expert witness on behalf of victims alleging false advertising who won $10 billion class action suit against Philip Morris. The company argued that the bond requirement would force it into bankruptcy. Warren made the case that was not the case. $45,000. I mean, there's more on here. The bottom line is just like read into these things a little bit more deeply. I would imagine in that other, sort of $1.5 million that's not accounted for, she was arguing the bankruptcy law in such a way that may have ended up being favorable to the corporation. But broadly speaking, she's functioning as a legal consultant. She's not on any litigation teams, which would be a far more dramatic, I think, involvement. She got paid something like $25,000 from Dow, whereas the litigation lasted for another 15 years. I mean, that's how people literally make their entire living is glomming onto one of those litigation cases. So to the extent that people have reservations about her, I think, some obviously make some sense, but
I'll certainly read into it more.
Time for Mayor Pete to release the details of his work at McKinsey.
I think so. I mean, supposedly, according to that, he is allowed to ask them to release him from his NDA, and it's unclear whether he's done that.
Do you have less conviction than Stormy Daniels? I mean, yes. Spoiler alert, yes.
Pete likes to act like his hands are tied by bureaucratic. Like, it's the same thing with the police situation. Like, my hands are tied. There's nothing I can do. I'd love to be totally transparent about the U.S. government agency I was working for.
All right. Well, let's be fair to Mr. Buttigieg. There are some things he has direct control over. That is his own transparency. And he's a can-do guy. He's a buck stops here guy, supposedly, right? Here he is at a local America forum, presidential forum.
Does it say Accelerator America? I can't read that.
Yeah, I can't read it either. But nevertheless, he's asked at this presidential forum. Will he open up his fundraisers? Now, this is not a situation where he has to rely on McKinsey to release him from the NDA, even
Who
though
knows?
he's not
Maybe
asking.
he's signing secret NDAs at his fundraiser.
This is his own fundraiser. And no one else, as far as I know, none of the top presidential candidates, to the extent that any of them are holding these type of fundraisers, and I think only 2 of them are, him and Biden, nobody else is keeping anybody out, or at least not allowing at least some reporting to take place. I wonder what's going on in these things that he's concerned about. But here's the other thing. Is this guy trying to make it into a scandal? Because this seems like a pretty bad way of handling it. Here's Pete Buttigieg.
Mayor, earlier today you said you were open to having a conversation about opening your fundraisers. And that's a
Pause it.
that
I love that. I'm open to having a conversation about opening my fundraisers.
That was the line that doomed Harris.
Yep.
We should have a conversation about that. It's terrible.
Yep. I'm open to having a conversation about having a conversation to open up the conversation about opening up the fundraisers.
I'm open to having a conversation.
Here we go.
He definitely is open to having that conversation.
Mayor, earlier today you said you were open to having a conversation about opening your fundraisers. And that's a question that reporters have been asking for months now. So I'm wondering, when do you expect to actually have that conversation and give like an answer on that?
Again, I don't have a timeline for you.
As the candidate, can't you just direct your campaign to open those doors?
What's that?
As the candidate, can't you just direct your campaign to open those doors?
Yes.
And why haven't you done so?
What's that?
Why haven't you done so?
There are a lot of considerations, and I'm thinking about it.
Ask questions. Can you give us an example of those considerations?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh my God.
Wow. Has he not
That
heard
was
of
like
the
British
Streisand
television.
effect?
Does he think, honestly, that people aren't going to, like, that there's no video, that video doesn't exist? Let's just go review here. Can you give us a timeline for when you'll open the conversations about opening your fundraisers? No. Why? Well, there are considerations. Can you tell us anything about those considerations? No.
You know.
Thanks, everybody, for coming by. And then he smiles and walks
But
off.
he actually looks, I mean, the other thing that disturbs me about him as a general election candidate, and I think we actually all, I mean, look, he clearly has some political skills. He's a mayor of a college town, and he's positioned himself very well. Okay, so we need to be a little objective here. But thinking of any of these people going up against Trump, it occurs to me that, and you see this in debates, he's got this whole like, gee gosh, I'm from Indiana brand. His anger at getting even gently challenged is so close to the surface there.
Well, that I have heard that is an Indiana thing as well.
It's an Indiana thing.
Yeah,
They're all
the
super-
seething
Hoosiers are
rage
pissed.
lurking beneath the fake smile.
I think that's a
Like,
Midwestern
warning,
thing, Jim.
contents under pressure.
Exactly.
But I think that, no, but I mean, what's amazing is that that's a question that you should expect to get. And even if you're going to BS, be ready to BS it. He's got zero prep for it or whatever. He's got nothing compelling to say. And he's pissed he's getting the question.
Yes. He seems super annoyed. Like, how dare you? Right. How dare you ask me that?
I just hate him so much. Like, we know the German word for a face in need of a fist. What's the German word for a mayor in need of a swirly?
I would also just point out Wendell Potter, the former health insurance executive, has a really good tweet thread here about what Pete's experience at McKinsey working in nonprofit healthcare might have actually looked like.
Now, Wendell was a former, basically public relations head for a major pharmaceutical company. In fact, his job entailed him going around and disparaging Michael Moore when Michael Moore's movie came out, and like coming up with research. I mean, I think they did some. If you read his book, I can't remember the specifics now, but some pretty not great things. And to a certain extent, I think it made him sick, and that's why he.
It's surprising there's not more Wendell Potters, frankly.
It is a little bit surprising, isn't it? Since we're talking about Mayor Pete, this is interesting. I wonder how this tactic will take with Donald Trump. Mayor Pete addressing, this is his biggest rally that he's had, apparently, in Iowa. And some folks sort of disagree with his program. And they put up they held up some murals or signs, essentially, at the rally. Here it is.
I'm going to try to mute this sound.
Trigger
so we
warning.
Don't.
Okay. We got the sound. We got to mute a little bit. Yeah, keep it down there. Are you speeding it up, maybe?
I mean, for copyright, but also because everyone hates that song.
There it
Right,
is.
there you go.
The zero support with black voters and climate plan totally lacking.
Yeah. Now, do we hear his response? Okay. Yeah. We need more than Pete.
Thank you for your support. Thank you, Mitch Gross, for your endorsement and for your leadership.
He later addresses it and says basically like, this is just a competitive process, but I wish you would lift your candidate up instead of tearing others down.
Yeah, he says, I'd humbly suggest that it's better to lift up your own candidate than trying to tear down others. And
if there's anything Pete knows, it's humility.
It's, you should be humble, and we can only hope that Donald Trump and his supporters will be just as humble about that.
Don't tear Pete down. Lift me up, folks.
Those signs are giving me a real Warren vibe. Like, they're very substantive and not mean. And like, yes, we need more than Pete. Elizabeth Warren's a little more than Pete.
Alfred E. Newman, folks. Alfred E. Newman.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump has been digging around in
this guy went to go
policy.
kill kids in Afghanistan just so he could be president. It's all useless.
Exactly. Donald Trump has apparently been digging into environmental policy as of late. And this is, I don't even know how to explain this. He is
substantial.
You wouldn't know how to explain it, would you?
He is looking to privatize more and more of our water systems. And here's how he justified the need for that.
We have a situation where we're looking very strongly at sinks and showers and other elements of bathrooms where you turn the faucet on in areas where there's tremendous amounts of water, where the water rushes out to sea because you could never handle it, and you don't get any water. You turn on the faucet, you don't get any water. They take a shower and water comes dripping out, just dripping out, very quietly dripping out. People are flushing toilets 10 times, 15 times, as opposed to once. They end up using more water. So EPA is looking at that very strongly, at my suggestion. You go into a new building or a new house or a new home, and they have standards on where you don't get water. You can't wash your hands practically. There's so little water comes out of the faucet. And the end result is you leave the faucet on, and it takes you much longer to wash your hands. You end up using the same amount of water. So we're looking at very seriously at opening up the standard. And there may be some areas where we'll go the other route, desert areas, but for the most part, you have many states where they have so much water that it comes down. It's called rain, that they don't know what to do with it. So we're going to be opening up that, I believe, and we're looking at changing the standards very soon.
It's like Vandana Shiva.
It's so good. I've watched this so many times.
Now, wait a second. I just want to be clear. Like, what are they are opening up the standards on what the water pressure can be, or wanting to privatize as some type of claim that there's so much water, it's rushing out to the ocean.
Well, I read some analysis where it's really funny to watch like professional journalists having to try to make sense of the things that he says. One of the things he might be referring to is a voluntary program that makers of water fixtures can participate in and then put like a logo on their package.
Right. In terms of like the way that they do
it's called Water Sense, I believe.
It's a tremendous amount of water.
Where your toilets don't use as much water when you flush it, and where your showers have like an aerator or something like that.
Vox is saying that President H.W. Bush signed the Energy Policy Act mandating any toilets installed in homes after 1994 use 1.6 gallons of water or less per flush. So,
yeah, we got to do that 15 times in my place.
I'm going to need a lot more water in here.
Too much double clutching going on. Like, I can't...
He's just a dirty little toilet boy. That's all there is to it.
He's just a hotel guy. Like, it's like he's building a new hotel.
That's what it is, I think.
He's also the kind of person who probably wipes his ass until there's blood on the toilet paper.
Okay, there you go. Thanks for that. Thank you.
I call him like I see him.
Well, I don't even need one. I don't want to. That also I don't want to know. No longer allowed to hang around the bathroom anymore, Jamie. Oh, gosh. Speaking of Kansas City, apparently voted to make all their public buses free. It's an important thing to just note. I want to say that again, one more time.
What's the matter with Kansas? The reverse version. What's right with Kansas, I guess.
Good stuff. But I don't, was that, it's actually Kansas City, Missouri.
Oh. What's right with Missouri?
What's right with Missouri?
Oh, gosh, I haven't even called into the phones yet.
Maybe Gordon.
Oh, yeah. Let's do this Gordon Brown thing. So Gordon Brown was the
Prime Minister.
Prime Minister representing labor until 2010.
Correct.
Through the 2008 financial crisis. And when Great Britain, England, imposed a lot of austerity, as did much of Europe. And Jeremy Corbyn was, I don't know if he was the lone voice, but he was one of the loudest voices saying, big mistake. Well, Gordon Brown has, with the benefit of hindsight, changed his perspective on a lot of those things that labor bought in, and to a large extent hurt labor.
Yeah, I mean, just to put a little bit of a fine point on it, I mean, the austerity definitely really accelerated after Brown was out. When the Tories took over, that's when they started. I mean, they've cut so much that wages haven't been stagnant; they've actually gone down, and really serious damage. He was not only known for that; he was the partner of Blair in deregulation. So that's like the other major area that he's sort of copying to some extent here, where they talked about labor's light touch regulation. On the other hand, some people say that Gordon Brown actually played a pretty significant role in sort of staving off even the financial crisis being even worse, supposedly, in his brief time as prime minister. That's what Krugman says. But at any rate, this is a big reversal.
Do you look at the Labour Party now and think they're ready for government?
Well, Jeremy Corbyn is a phenomenon. We've got to accept that. He may have disagreed with me on many issues, but I respect...
Certainly did.
I respect... Well, he probably voted against me about 500 times.
Did he ever vote with you?
Sometimes. But I respect the fact that he's a phenomenon. And he is expressing people's anger about universal credit, about what happened at Grenfell Towers, about affordable housing, about inequality in our country, about tuition fees. And he is articulating that anger. It's absolutely clear to me that the old neoliberal consensus, which was basically inequality was good for growth and you never have deficit financing because that is building up unacceptable debt, that's all gone. It's completely discredited. It took 10 years from the financial recession for it to be discredited. I couldn't win the argument about a stimulus for the economy in 2010. People were worried about debt and deficits and thought that was the equivalent of incest. I couldn't win the argument with the people, and I regret that, because we then had 7 years of wasted austerity, and this is a lost decade. But now people have come, both internationally and in Britain, to the view that the right form of economic policy is where you can combine social justice, economic efficiency, and environmental sustainability, and there is a new wave of support for what you might call collective action in this country. And I've always said you've got to be radical because you're a progressive party and you want to do things about fairness and social cohesion, but you've got to be credible, and it's matching the two that will make the successful Labour.
There you go. He seemed quite prepared to say that. Good stuff. Let's go to the phones calling from a 308 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam, it's Kowalski.
Kowalski in Nebraska. How are you, Kowalski?
Freezing my ass off, but
I bet.
Hey, I was calling in just to say I think your show on Friday was probably the funniest thing I've heard all year. So,
David Feldman's
that
very,
man
very
was
funny.
Absolutely hilarious.
Yeah, he's very.
But I
very
got to ask you.
Yeah.
Are you guys actually lefties?
What's that? Are we actually?
Are you guys actually lefties?
Why do you?
Yeah.
Why do you ask?
Well, I'm just curious if everyone in the studio is a lefty. If so, that's statistically like phenomenal.
You mean left-handed?
Oh, you mean left?
Yes. See, she's the smartest one in the room, guys. See, I just didn't know if you guys were lefties like me.
I am.
Righty.
See.
Yeah, I'm right-handed.
See, Sam's on
Normal
the right.
side,
You guys
dude.
heard it here, folks.
There you go.
Both sides, many sides. Lefty
But,
solidarity.
hey, one thing I did. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I just said lefty solidarity. We live an
Hell
average
yeah.
of
Everyone
a few
listen
years
to her.
shorter.
She needs a raise.
Oh, say that again.
What was that? I think I'm cutting out.
All right. Well, we appreciate the call.
Well, the reason I wanted to call in was there was actually a story Tucker Carlson recently did Nebraska, Sydney, Nebraska, and the plight they're going through. I didn't know if you guys had seen anything about that.
Is that the one about Paul Singer?
Yes.
And the hedge fund that came in and destroyed Cabela's?
That is correct. I just want people to be aware that he's obviously, not really in solidarity with the plight of Nebraskans, because Sass has always been the target of a lot of Trumpist momentum just because he says he's, keeps an open mind. I mean, he's voted with him 95% of the time, but
Ben Sass.
just keep that kind of stuff in mind, that Fox News will co-opt a lot of populist rhetoric. So,
Yeah, I mean, I thought, though, it is I thought that piece, like I say, like you're saying, is that it, in the hands of Tucker Carlson, not healthy. It was a good piece, and it's definitely something I would like to see from, we should be getting more of those pieces on MSNBC, frankly. And, to the extent that we have any type of left media, it would be nice if CNN even did it, but, they're not really left-oriented media, and they're not populist media. And that is,
I will just say that that's kind of one of the things why I think Fox News is so popular out here, is that they do talk to us in a superficial way, which I think a lot of people don't really understand. And just since they're the only ones mentioning it, everyone thinks that, well, they're the only ones paying attention to us. So it's kind of like with all the flooding. They were like the only ones who ever touched on it.
Well,
So,
here's the thing that's interesting. If you go and look at where Fox has its clearance, in other words, what cable companies carry it, they have far more carriage in the middle of the country than MSNBC. CNN is broadly, I think, across the country. And maybe this has changed a little bit in the past 5-10 years, but it used to be that MSNBC was just covered on, was just carried on the coast. So that's where their audience is, and people like to hear people talk about them. So, but yeah, it's a problem. I appreciate the call.
It's a major problem that Tucker Carlson is the only person talking about real economic issues on cable. Yes.
It's a nightmare, actually.
Yeah, it's actually right. That's actually like a national crisis.
And right-wing populism is a kind of populism that we need to understand in order to deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's for reals. Calling from
well
201.
done.
Thanks.
I could see we're really taking it seriously.
Well, I mean,
no.
To the
Sometimes
the frustration
you just gotta
is
put
this.
your hands up. And
Right. Well,
say,
the frustration is we don't have the resources to do a reported piece like that. We just don't have it. We don't have the resources to do a producer piece. They'll send somebody out there. They'll put it together. And this has to come from these bigger news outlets.
But right. I mean, I think what it has ultimately, people need to get serious about strategies for funding nonprofit investigative journalism and
ProPublica, but I mean, doing
ProPublica,
broadcast
but in a
media
way
is tough.
that I know, but I don't see it coming from cable news.
Or co-ops. Means TV is doing some very ambitious things with a left-leaning worker-owned cooperative. So I'll be excited to see what they do.
Yep. Calling from a 201 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Anthony from New Jersey.
Hello, Anthony from New Jersey. What's on your mind?
Hi. You guys were talking about Afghanistan earlier, and I'm not sure. I missed a little bit of the show today, but did you play the Nancy Pelosi clip about, or have you heard about the clip where she talks about how she knew that George Bush was lying about the Afghanistan intelligence and how
About Iraq.
he refrained? Yeah.
All right, I'll play that clip
was
now. I'll play that clip now.
Okay, yeah, because like we just have to remember that Nancy Pelosi is like, at best she's like a frenemy of the left, and that she needs at least pressure to be put on her, and that we need to do everything to support her progressive challenger in Shahid Buttar.
Yep.
And I just also, I guess that's the main thing I was going to say. Also, I was the one who called about having a Spanish majority report, and I know you guys are interested in learning languages. So I think just a suggestion, maybe if you guys all learn Spanish and you guys put together and helped each other learn by having a Spanish majority report, that wouldn't be a bad idea. All right. Thanks.
Appreciate the call.
No better way to learn than in front of an audience of thousands, Pressure makes diamonds.
Might hurt the viewership a little bit.
Trump.
Stumble our way through Spanish.
No bueno.
It's very
Nancy Pelosi.
Trump es stupido.
Nancy Pelosi. Also no bueno.
Uno problema.
Falso amigo.
It is good because
It's
a lot
no
of the
verdad.
political words are the same in Spanish and English.
De politica, de neoliberal.
This is highly problematic. In the run up to the 2006 election, I believe it was. Maybe it was 2008, but I'm pretty sure it was 2006. John Conyers, who was then the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, had amassed a massive binder. It was about this big. I saw it. I held it. Of impeachable offenses that George W. Bush had committed. And there was a real belief by Democrats, I know he was sincere about it, that they were going to hold impeachment hearings. When they took the House in 2006, Nancy Pelosi shut it down. Now, it's hard to prove a counterfactual. We don't know what would have happened in 2008 if impeachment hearings had started in 2006. Maybe it would have helped John McCain win. Maybe it would have hurt the Democrats' chance of picking up the Senate. We do know that those gains were not terribly durable in terms of the House. But we also know that it was just one more sort of, straw on the camel's back, one more brick on the wall of accountability that allows presidents and our leaders to get away with literally murder. Here's Nancy Pelosi, who seems to have zero compunction about stymieing those pushes for impeachment and holding to account the Bush administration, which lied this country into a war of choice that killed hundreds of thousands of civilians, killed thousands of American military personnel, Immiserated tens of thousands more, cost trillions of dollars, and continues to be a crap show. Here's Nancy Pelosi on a town hall. I guess this was last night, right?
So, Speaker Pelosi, you resisted calls for the impeachment of President Bush in 2006 and President Trump following the Mueller report earlier this year. This time is different. Why did you oppose impeachment in the past? And what is your obligation to protect our democracy from the actions of our president now?
Thank you. Thank you for bringing up the question about, because when I became Speaker the first time, there was overwhelming call for me to impeach President Bush on the strength of the war in Iraq, which I vehemently opposed. And again, I said at other places, that was my wheelhouse. I was intelligence. I was the ranking member on the Intelligence Committee, even before I became part of the leadership of Gang of Four. So I knew there were no nuclear weapons in Iraq. It just wasn't there. They had to show us, they had to show the Gang of Four all the intelligence they had. The intelligence did not show that that was the case. So I knew it was a misrepresentation to the public. But having said that, it was in my view, not a ground for impeachment. They won the election, they made a representation, and to this day, people think that that it was the right thing to do. The people think that Iraq had something to do with 9/11. I mean, it's appalling what they did. But I did, and I said, if somebody wants to make a case, you bring it forward. But they had impeached Bill Clinton for personal indiscretion and misrepresenting about it. Impeached him. Some of these same people are saying, oh, this doesn't rise to impeachment. We're right there impeaching Bill Clinton for being stupid in terms of something like that. I mean, I love him. I think he was a great president. But being stupid in terms of that, and what would somebody do not to embarrass their family? But in any event, and that's so they did Bill Clinton. Now they want me to do George. I just didn't want it to be a way of life in our country. As far as the Mueller report...
Pause it for 1 second. We can listen to the rest of this. But what she just said there was astonishing. I mean, frankly, she should be impeached. It was did you say a misrepresentation?
To the public.
I wonder also, I'd like to know, okay, so she said nuclear weapons. I'd like to know if they knew that there was no weapons of mass destruction as well. And be clear here. Weapons of mass destruction are such a general term. A bucket full of ricin is classified as a weapons of mass destruction, but it can barely do anything to mass amounts of people. A guy driving a car through 42nd Street, through Times Square, is a weapon of mass destruction in terms of like what a canister of ricin could do. This is, I mean, this is stunning. And the idea that this isn't headline news now is because I think every one of these news media outlets were also sort of like actively participating the same way that she was in this. And I mean, honestly, like, I get the sense that she should not be speaking in public. Either she doesn't understand what she just said. Hundreds of thousands of civilians were killed because of that lie. Because we don't want the smoking gun to be a mushroom cloud. She also must know that they outed Valerie Plame because Joe Wilson, her husband at the time, was going public proving that claim that there were nuclear weapons there was false. She must know, like, I mean, that is stunning. That's something that you got to carry to your grave if you're going to. I mean, I don't think you should. I don't think you should be doing that in the first place. But the idea that she's going out bragging about it on CNN, and I still didn't impeach him. Are you kidding me?
Iraqi
That's
lives are not a
insane.
factor for these people. I mean,
It's
let's be real.
insane.
And this is why so many people are turned off by the impeachment narrative the way it's going right now, because it is dominated by people like her.
What? That we should, because she didn't impeach George Bush, that you shouldn't impeach now?
No, I'm
saying. Why is it that you need to shoehorn that in there? It was wrong then. It's wrong now. You hold them to account. Every time you do not hold a president. The reason why he was able to get away with that was the same reason why Ronald Reagan, because we didn't impeach Ronald Reagan. You hold them to account. If it's not enough, that's the problem. If there's other people who want to go out there and march to impeach him for other things, they should do it. But hundreds of thousands of people died for that. I'm not going to hear this fucking bullshit anymore.
Can I finish what I was
tired of it.
saying?
Yeah, finish it.
Because I agree with you. I'm saying you look at Nancy Pelosi and she says, oh, yeah, we wouldn't impeach Bush because his lies led to the deaths of millions of people. But when someone breaks the emoluments clause, like that
he's not being impeached for emoluments. She agreed to impeachment because people pushed for it. Period. End of story. She didn't want to impeach.
I know. I'm just saying she gives it a bad image.
She gives impeachment a bad image?
Yeah. Because she wouldn't impeach Bush over stuff.
Well,
that led
then
to the
anybody who
deaths of
thinks that
millions
impeachment
of
is a
people.
problem because Nancy Pelosi was reluctant to do it, I think that is really faulty
Well, I
reasoning.
don't think so, but I'm just saying.
Well, bring in the people who want to have that argument, because I'll have that argument with those people. But if you want to represent them, then I'll have it with you.
Jesus, I was agreeing with you.
Well, I'm sorry. I just like the idea of shoehorning this in. We're talking about Iraq. I got fucking calls from military personnel whose lives were destroyed during that time. It's just, I like shoehorning this shit in to the skepticism of I don't know who, the 8% of Democrats or the Republicans about impeachment into this story is just, it's ridiculous.
The story is also about impeachment, but
I understand.
Clearly, I angered you, and I did not mean to.
I'm sorry. I'm a little sensitive about this.
Yeah, so am I. My only point is that she's being a ghoul.
She's been a ghoul. That's right. It's just unbelievable to me that she has the gall to go up and brag about this stuff. The value of impeachment is worth it just to get her to come up and admit on television that they knew. I don't know if that admission has happened in other places. I haven't heard of it. All right, let's read some IMs. I don't need to see any more of what she said there. That's the relevant part. Colin from Nebraska. I'm on an interview panel for my union tonight to find out which Nebraska primary candidate we should endorse to challenge the Republican congressman in Nebraska's 2nd District. I was going to lead off with asking whether universal coverage is the goal right now of healthcare policy. I mean, I'm sorry. The amount of lying, the physical violence, the threats that came, and she knew all along this was a lie? Thousands of people's lives destroyed, hundreds of thousands dead. 2 million internal refugees, 2 million external refugees. In this country, if you were against the war because you were saying there was no weapons of mass destruction there, you were physically threatened. And she knew? And is bragging that she did nothing about it? It's stunning. All right. I apologize. I didn't mean to get so upset, but that was a very dramatic time. Incredibly isolating. And to have her get up there and brag that they knew it was a misrepresentation. Colin from Nebraska. I'm on an interview panel for my union tonight to find out which Nebraska primary candidate we should endorse to challenge the Republican congressman in Nebraska's 2nd District. I was going to lead off with asking whether universal coverage is the goal right now of healthcare policy, then follow up with why doesn't Medicare for all and the public option achieve universal coverage? Is that good, or do you recommend another method? One of the opponents says Medicare for all is not feasible in today's political world, so why waste time on it? Well, in terms of the last point, I would say, well, how do you know it's not feasible? Until you try and go for it. The other would be, I would talk about not just about achieve universal coverage, because that's always a big dodge, but I would talk about in terms of costs as well. Connecticut comrade, MR Crew, I got both my parents, my girlfriend, and my oldest brother, who's in California, to commit to voting for Bernie. Nice. Also, did you see the video of Pete saying that the kid, to the kid he wouldn't stop taking? Well, we did. We played that a little bit earlier. Gregory from Oklahoma. Hey, everyone should go check out my new interview with Anthony Clark, who's running for Congress in Illinois' 7th District. Also, stay tuned for some interviews I have coming up during the month. I've got some interviews lined up with some congressional candidates, local Oklahoma politicians, musicians, comedians, and even a model. All right. Well, good for you. Please support the Green Corn Rebellion Show on Patreon and watch on YouTube. It's the Green Corn Rebellion Show on Patreon and on YouTube. A Square. Sam, it's very apropos that you cover the report on Afghan war. It was first SCOTUS seating Bush, then 9/11, then the Afghan and Iraq war, all part of the reasons we find ourselves in this impeachment moment. Well, really, this de-evolution of what democracy we had mostly gained after civil rights movement started over 40 years ago. But thanks for helping us get through it all for the best of anything with Judy Gold. Nick from Manitoba. Hey, Mr. Cedar, great show thus far. On a random note, I was wondering if there's going to be a chapter on the earliest 20th century German electorate in your book, blaming the electorate. Well, I think that's probably a good place to start.
Historical highlight.
Rick from Florida. Hey, Sam, you talked previously about Limbaugh having a talent that other right-wing radio hosts did not. Can you elaborate on that? I guess I don't understand what makes him unique relative to, say, Sean Hannity or Mark Levin. Well, just as a performer, Sean Hannity in particular, I don't know. I imagine he's gotten better after 30 years, but he just delivers talking points. Whereas Limbaugh basically spins an entire narrative that not only goes from story to story, but over the course of a show and over the course of an extended period of time, where he has these macros, as you were, or just sort of like meta narratives that I think are just far more sophisticated. Levin is more of a showman than Hannity, and I guess on some level he also has that too, but he just doesn't have it as well as Limbaugh. H-Dub, Sam, what the heck? Lindsey Graham's Cabana Boy. Mayo Pete claims to be gay, but I can imagine him feeling. I can't imagine him feeling anything for anyone else. Fake news, identity politics. Rube David. Nancy Pelosi had to be pushed into proceeding with the Nuremberg trials. Matzian, have you guys seen the latest biased BBC coverage of the election in the UK? Political editor of BBC News, Laura Knussberg, passing on fake news source from Conservative Party apparatchiks without verifying the labor activists attacking ministerial aides. No apology yet.
No, I just real quick. Yes, it is literally the BBC for pushing fake news. And the actual story here is Boris Johnson basically refusing to answer a question when confronted with a picture of a 4-year-old in an NHS hospital with pneumonia sleeping on a pile of coats.
Yeah, it's amazing to watch the BBC do interference for the Tories, and then the Tories going to get in power and cut the license fee.
Or maybe not. I mean, the thing is, even more structurally, the BBC, which has always been, like, for decades, the go-to example of you can't have state-funded media that's independent and does a good job, is destroying that brand as we speak.
Well, that's part of the problem. I mean, PBS did the same thing when they were trying to get national money. That's when you started to see, like, well, we're going to have, Crossfire. Or not Crossfire, but the firing line.
Introducing crappy content with bad pundits is one thing. They already have that. Actively running interference in the heart of an election campaign, undermining their supposedly independent election editorial is a whole other level, which probably the PBS does as well.
Let's go to the phones. Calling from an 801 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. Is this me, Sam?
Yes.
Yes, this is Kyle from Salt Lake City calling.
Kyle, what's up?
Yeah, so last night specifically, I was just really focused on the Nancy Pelosi video. And it really, really got to me because I used to be someone, like when I became politically aware, it was during the Obama era, and I used to think I was somewhat of a libertarian because simply some of the decisions he made about drone strikes, for example. And I think I lean more towards the civil libertarian side that you guys talked about last week. But the straight up, like, underlying racism to just, like, joke about it in the way that she did. And I think the issue with the impeachment is it's like, if it were the Rashida Tlaib type of impeachment where it's like, let's impeach the motherfucker for lying to get, or for the kids in the cages, for the genocide in Yemen to protect the arms and hotel sales, like, that's where the energy could have been. But it's frustrating that it had to take something like attacking Biden for this to be the result. So to see how her mind works when it comes to these impeachment proceedings and, like, talking about the Iraq war in that way is just so sickening and just keeps me up. Like, I don't know how I can, vote for these people. It's so hard for me to support a party whose leadership, like, there's like the clapping hand emoji people on Twitter, like, calling her queen for finally agreeing for impeachment. But then I have to, like, deal with this video. Like, I don't know how to justify this shit in my brain anymore.
Right. This is literally the point that I was trying to make as well.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. But the bottom line is that when the Obama administration, to the extent that there's no impeachment for their policy with immigration, part of that is a function of, and the Obama administration in no way did it to the extent that the Trump administration has. But the fact of the matter is that what he did was legal. It's wrong.
Right.
It's wrong. The precedent had been set. None of us around here were terribly invested in immigration during Obama's years. We would talk about it a little bit. I mean, this is on the American public as well. I mean, look, he could have been impeached for what was in the Mueller investigation, but nobody bothered to fucking read the report.
Yeah.
And
so, like,
there are consequences to electing people. Now, I agree with you. The people who are clapping emoji on Twitter saying that Nancy Pelosi is queen, it's ridiculous. But it also should not be the basis of why you vote.
Right.
And
it's just like our choices here are just so hard to square with each other. And, like, there's
no consistency in this.
Of this type of stuff.
But wait a second. There's no consistency in this. This is a function also of the American public not giving a shit. You joke about the electorate doesn't care. Well, the electorate didn't give a shit. And this one just happened to catch fire with the electorate. And if people had shown up before August in these town hall meetings to push for impeachment, it would have happened. Because it didn't happen this time because Nancy Pelosi gives a shit about Joe Biden. That's just moronic. That's not why it happened. It happened because this caught fire. Because there was a whistleblower and basically people bucked. Adam Schiff bucked Nancy Pelosi. That's what happened here.
I'm going to make a point. You take a deep breath. Real quick, though, I do think when they were going all in, there was a time last summer where it felt like everybody was covering the border, even mainstream news. And there was actually a dent in his approval ratings, if I recall correctly. I want to look at that again, and that should be encouraging.
I mean, yeah, I agree. I mean, I think people are far more, like paying attention to immigrant, but there was no, I didn't see I saw outrage about it. I saw people who were protesting it. But there wasn't a specific
Well, the other
calls
direction
for
you go in
impeachment.
is your original argument, which is that the midterm results are the argument for impeachment.
Yes.
That's the whole
right.
other
Like when
argument.
we get all these freshman congressmen in there being super
So just focus on that, man.
Exciting the bases about that. It seems like that was the perfect time to really
Yeah,
go
so I
after
would focus
something
on
like
those
this. Like, we
people
even got,
and
like,
Bernie.
I agree. But the idea that Nancy Pelosi was not pushed enough for impeachment 10 months ago is no argument not to have impeachment now.
Oh, we absolutely need to draw a line, and I 100% all in on impeachment because, I mean, we all know Trump is grotesque and disgusting, but like it's so hard to like see the stuff that goes, that didn't meet her criteria in her brain, and that's really hard for me to square with.
You just saw that. Yeah, she's
pressure.
horrible. But this is not, there's not been a moment, at least here, that we have celebrated Nancy Pelosi for this. This is not about Nancy Pelosi at all.
I mean, you're right. Like the center-right Dem, like corporate Dem Twitter, they were all stoked.
Dude, there's a real political fight.
Really count.
There's a real political fight to be had that might. I mean, I am not sanguine at all about the convention. And look, people like Nancy Pelosi, Pete Buttigieg, Joe Biden are absolutely the political enemy. But that being said, I mean, you just can't let people's obnoxious habits on Twitter be a serious motivator for any type of real decision in real life.
Yes.
Like you just got to totally drop that. In fact, if you really want to take it deep, you're enacting, I mean, whatever, sounds so pretentious, but like all you're doing is rewarding those tech platforms when you do that. And those are pernicious capitalist companies, don't let some idiot, and I read a funny reframe, which I'm not sure, over the weekend by Jeffrey St. Clair in Counterpunch, and his thing, he talked about his and Alexander Coburn's argument about impeaching Clinton, and Coburn was opposed to it for obvious reasons because it was so petty, and St. Clair was like, actually, like, I want him to be impeached for Iraq and Sudan and welfare, and I love this, like, the more petty the better. Was his sort of frame.
Right.
I mean, whatever. The bottom line is, do not make major life decisions based off of anything.
Right. The hard
that
thing for me
those
to
people
just
say
swear
on Twitter.
is the lack of morality. Like, for example,
Yeah,
Mike
they suck,
Lee and
but
Bernie
that's
Sanders.
it.
Mike Lee, a Republican senator, and Bernie Sanders passed the
Well, so
the
did
bill
Chris
to
Murphy,
stop,
for what it's worth.
aiding the Yemeni genocide, and that gets vetoed, and then we don't hear about it again, and that's really frustrating, and like that lack of morality is really hard to square with in my brain sometimes.
Yes, I get that, and
those people suck. Don't expect anything more of them.
And I would say this: to the extent that there will ever be any legitimate accounting for any of those things, it is, if there is any slight chance of there being accounting, it is enhanced by impeaching the guy. It is by at least showing in one silo there is some level of accountability. I would put the odds at some accountability for that very, very low. But look, at the very least, you have, Kristen Nielsen can't see, show her face anywhere, where you have guys like Martin O'Malley, basically screaming at Ken Cuccinelli in a restaurant. I mean, those moments have relevance. The fact that Donald Trump is not going to be impeached over those, on their immigration policy, which obviously racist and bigoted, but this is
the people who, and in the world today, I mean, look, people in Haiti, people in Ecuador, people in Chile are putting everything on the line, in Colombia, all over. They're putting, and my point is like that kind of generalized disgust needs to be turned into protesting or backing Bernie Sanders or organizing. Like that, this is the horror. I mean, Twitter is good for information dissemination, but like as a metric for your personal satisfaction and expectation set around people that suck to begin with, just let it go.
Well, Nancy Pelosi's on TV. It's not just Twitter, but point taken. Yeah, she's
sucks on TV
I think it's
too.
just a matter of corporate politicians not giving a shit about black and brown people. I think that like unless foreign policy is front and center, like in your candidate for presidency, like it can't be overstated how important that is, and that's why you have to vote for Bernie Sanders. There's no one else that's making.
I mean, look at the beginning of the beginning of the year, she shot over her signature bill to climb over people to condemn Ilhan Omar.
Yep, hasn't actually said anything about Trump's anti-Semitism over the weekend, but yeah. Probably shouldn't mention that. I just want to thank you guys all for getting me into, a left criticism of this type of thing. I'm a patron of all of your shows now. Jamie, I joined DSA because of a lot of the things that you've had to say about DSA here in Salt Lake City. So,
oh, hell yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Like, I don't know what I would do without your show. And this video kept me up to 3 a.m. last night, just going fucking nuts. So I just... being able to talk to you guys today has been kind of therapeutic for me. And Sam, I feel your rage, even though I'm younger and wasn't around for the fight like you were. But vote for Bernie Sanders, because there's no one else that's going to center the discussion in a way that values human lives all over the globe in a way that all humans deserve to.
Love it.
Appreciate the call. Thank you. Look. Jamie, I'm sorry. I should not have gotten that heated about it. But I should have handled that better. But the idea of that the problem with impeachment is that we haven't done other things.
No. I think you misconstrued my point, and I appreciate your apology. All I was saying was that Nancy Pelosi is a politically bad representative of impeachment for the reasons that we went over. And I could see how it would be bad strategically to have someone like that who is such a ghoul on so many topics and who didn't think we should impeach over the Iraq war, being the public facing representative of impeachment now.
I don't think she is. I think to the extent that there's any public facing, it's where's Adam? I mean, that's what the Republicans are. It's Adam Schiff and it's Nadler to a certain extent as well. Impeachment. Nancy Pelosi is so far away from impeachment. She's bragging about not doing it during Bush, and she was. It's well known that she was reluctant to do it, and. So, I mean, I just think that, like, in the context of I get it that impeachment is not fun for certain people or that people aren't psyched about it, but that's okay. Fine. I think that's also probably why we didn't impeach him over other things. This was just, there was a whistleblower. You had people in the administration who were willing to come out and talk against it. You had a whistleblower report. There was no whistleblower, as far as I know, about, what was going on in immigration. Everybody saw it. It was right out in front.
But wouldn't you say the majority of the people who are talking about impeachment on television are not people like Rashida Tlaib?
To be honest with you, if they're not on Survivor or Mr. Robot, I don't see it. I don't know who the people who are on television talking about it. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter. Like it doesn't matter to me that there are people on Twitter who are doing clapping hand emojis. I get it. It's annoying.
Like this, I'm not making an argument about the merits of impeachment, but the politics of the way that it's been represented and the way that it's being represented to people. And I could see how that would be a turnoff to some.
I like I say, maybe, there's 8% of Democrats who are not interested. There's 50% of independents who are not, this is a polarized country. And,
but I don't know if anybody that sickened by Democrats, the establishment Democrats in general, is going to be reachable on this stuff anyway.
On impeachment?
I mean, if they're just turned off by like what Adam Schiff looks like on television, yeah, I don't think they're a good audience for impeachment stuff.
Really cool. Susan Collins, Justice Democrats challenger, is Betsy Sweet. Supporting Sweet puts additional pressure on Collins from the left. Could help sway her on impeachment vote. I mean, look, he's not going to get convicted in the Senate. So as far as I'm concerned, let Susan Collins vote to protect him. All the better. I hope Donald Trump is calling Susan Collins right now, saying, if you vote against me, I'm going to come and I'm going to campaign for Lepage. He is not going to get convicted in the Senate.
I really hope nobody's entertaining that idea. That's not going to happen.
Well, there's some part of the left.
Yeah.
Well, that says that if the Senate doesn't vote to impeach him, it's all for naught.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is where I think that's where there's like this weird overlapping circle of liberal delusion and certain left critique that I disagree. I mean, I think it remains to be seen the political efficacy of it, but that's the question is purely the political efficacy of it. And I hope it will be super goddamn effective. And I think Susan Collins is by far the most vulnerable.
Right. She's the poster child for this. Negro spiritual. Damn, Sam, I've never heard you so angry before. We should talk about the 2 Iraqi kids I helped raise in Boston on the other side of that coin. One is 50% covered in burns after our troop mistook their taxi as a car bomb, blowing it up, killing his mother, whose lap he was on as an infant. Champagne communist. Love your passion, Sam. We're sick of the bullshit. Salty Gates. Sam, you need to publicly apologize to Jamie. And Jamie, don't stay with MR. You're never going to get a fair shake. They need to sort out the way of treating and listening to women. Jamie, your worth is more than this. The rest of the cucks just sit silent. I apologized. I don't think it's a function of Jamie being a woman that I got that upset. But Stale Nate, hell yeah, for free public transit, Kansas City, Missouri. What's amazing is the broad support and very little pushback, partly because it's simple budget reprioritization, but most agree that this is a massive public good. All it took was a council vote and the progressive leadership of a Democratic mayor not named Pete Buttigieg. Though you never know, we could be accidentally subsidizing rich people to ride the bus. Indeed. Congressional baseball fan. MR Crew, I love you all, even though I'm now sitting here wrapped in a weighted blanket, clutching a globe while I download the BetterHelp app.
My mom got me a weighted blanket for my birthday. And,
she did?
I'm a fan of it.
Right?
So, yeah.
Sev, support for Judy Gold supercut for the best ofs. David Daughter, moved by your Pelosi reaction. I'm furious about that too. I mean, Christ. Sam Conscience, you owe Jamie a pint of Ben & Jerry's for being mean. Some malarkey. Hey, Sam, I got to say, Joe Biden's point of worrying what will happen if the Dems thoroughly destroy the Republicans in 2020 is sitting heavy on my heart. I don't have that quote in front of me, but it's stunning. I'm black. I don't know what I would do with all the free time if I didn't have to re-register to vote each election or explain what I'm doing walking on the nice side of town. Jimmy Durr, in that Pelosi clip, she justified not impeaching by saying they won the election and made their decision. Wrong. They stole it and the Supreme Court appointed Bush. Pelosi has to go. Pederast. I think we can all agree. Somebody can make a pretty penny clipping Sam shouting at Jamie video from Mike Cernovich. Mid Doctors. Hi, Sam. Apologize to Jamie for kicking so hard. I got triggered too, but hit the like button. Okay, I did. I don't know what to hit the like button. Sam,
everyone who feels bad for me can subscribe to the Antifada.
There you go.
Saying.
Patreon.com.
Where were these people during the outbursts back in the day? Damn.
Sam, to what are you looking for people to subscribe to your show?
Well, I would say, look, Sam actually had regular crazy tirades back in the day, and patreon.com/TMBS, people.
Matt from Mass. Sam,
but it's not gendered. It's just unhinged.
Matt from Mass. Sam, to what extent do you think an electorate or a holistic campaign of disinformation that depressing political participation? Most people I talk to are just exhausted and don't know what to think. I'm sure that there's absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not sure if it's that the American people don't care. I think it's because they feel powerless and downtrodden, if that makes sense. I think there's some to that. I think it's also just like there's a lot of people who are just like, it's just too complicated to figure out. And I think for a lot of people, they don't have the time to do it. I got to do this professionally, and your kid gets sick, whatever it is, you got to you have your own job. I mean, it's hard to wade through this, and I think, frankly, look, there's a lot of misinformation that's put out there, both domestic. I think also it's the case. I hear stories now about different governments. I mean, and there's a lot of noise to the signal ratio. There's no doubt about it. And I mean, that's, a part of what we try and do here is to cut down on that ratio.
If I had a multi-million-dollar fascist messaging organization, I would do as much as possible to make people feel that way.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's your old Alex Jones line again.
I mean, yeah, exactly. And frankly, that's also, the strategy that the Trump campaign used. I don't know if the Democrats use this. I doubt it, because they're just not smart enough to. But, when they bought those Facebook ads, and when the countries that wanted to, influence the messaging, it was all just to sort of create an inability to sort of make an assessment, to just have people get overwhelmed and walk away. And part of it, that's like, that's, I think, maybe why on some level, broadly speaking, the argument that like impeachment's not good because it's not about the stuff that we want it to is, I find to be sort of unhelpful. Is that it's just like, one more sort of cross current that is not, it's not a political argument. I mean, there are political arguments as to, holding him to account on certain things. But in terms of like an assessment of impeachment.
Well, I think the outcomes have yet to be proven, as we've said already.
Well, look, the arguments against impeachment were not that it wasn't going to give positive returns. The argument is it was going to be a net negative. And that it's going to fire up the Republican base. And it was going to get people to vote for Trump more. I mean, we can go back 3 months and look at it, but that's what it was. There's no evidence of that happening at all. And what is clear is that for the past 2 months, 3 months since this started, they're not able to promote whatever they were cooking up. And you can look in Oklahoma, that the thing that the Trump campaign manager put out. Impeachment's doing better than the congresswoman living there. And there's like, what else was going to happen at this time? Democrats have passed a fix to the Voting Rights Act. Nobody gives a crap. Did it even make Google News? The landmark voting rights bill of the 20th century was gutted by the Supreme Court. The Democrats passed a fix for it. It's not going to go anywhere. People are upset because it's dominated cable news coverage.
Yeah, I mean, the outcomes that I'm concerned about haven't been proven yet either. So,
what are the outcomes that people are concerned about in terms of like impeachment, impeaching on this?
Like people who don't watch the show, lower information people who might be maybe on the Bernie train, sympathetic to left populism, might say, "Oh, this impeachment stuff is garbage because it's being pushed by centrist schools like Pelosi."
And what's the outcome?
The outcome is maybe they don't come out and vote for Democrats as much. Like, that's the thing that I'm afraid of.
I mean, I suppose that's possible. I don't know how you would measure that, and I don't know how small those numbers would be. I mean, I can see people saying, I'm not going to vote for a Democrat because Nancy Pelosi just bragged about allowing George Bush to lie, but that has nothing to do with this impeachment. She just happens to be.
Yeah. It also changes the character of support behind impeachment, right? Because we've been talking about a left version and a more centrist version. And if it's only supported by people who stand Nancy Pelosi, it might look a little different than if it's supported by progressives as well.
I think it's already looked different. Like, that's why when Pelosi gets up there and says this is all about Russia, like, who's in charge of this has been determined by that, and they're going to stick to a narrow focus that doesn't implicate a lot of people, right?
I mean, who knows? I mean, to the extent that she has any control over this, it is also a function of like, well, where people are pushing. New York Times is reporting that Barr and Durham publicly disagree with Horowitz's report on the Russia inquiry. So the IG report is out. Durham is disagreeing with it. All right, we'll cover this more tomorrow. Dr. Chaos MD. Buttigieg is probably having fundraisers with the odious people, and once he gets those out of the way, I bet he'll have some celebs people generally like or don't care about and on stage. I mean, I think there's probably some of that. He's got to lock in some people first. Calling from a 423 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Ian from Portland, Oregon.
Ian, what's on your mind?
I was going to call in and talk about the UK political situation, but you already kind of covered that. I just want to say it's looking like Labor's only about 6 points off nationally right now, which is very, very good for them. Either headed for a hung parliament or potentially even a Corbyn prime ministership. And that's really what I want to ask about. What does that mean for Bernie? Because it seems like right now, South America, in France, there's a general strike. All over the place, there is a movement that is going against the current political establishment. In fact, just to go to bolster Jamie, what she was saying about Pelosi, I watched the towers come down in my high school class. And I've always disliked Nancy Pelosi since the time I was 17 years old. I'm from Georgia originally. And it just always annoyed
Didn't like
me when
that she did 9/11?
more centrist people. Yes, 9/11, I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay.
I was like 17 when that happened. And, and I always hated the response from the Democrats. I didn't see the point in war. I hated it. And that you can understand how that position was not very popular in 2001 in Georgia. I got a lot of critique as well. But to be honest, it just always bothered me that more centrist older people didn't see through the existing Democrats that were already in Washington. But so basically, the question to go back is, what do you think that means for the left movement in the U.S. if Corbyn and Labor wins? And also to talk about how in the BBC, they're weaponizing, and I want to ask you about this specifically, they're weaponizing anti-Semitism against Corbyn. They've been saying, oh, he's a he's a rabid anti-Semite. He supports, but none of it's true. He's a lifelong crusader against racism and everything. So what does that mean? Why are they doing that? And so those are my two questions.
Well, I think, and I'll let you go answer, but I think that thanks for the call.
Sure.
I think as a bellwether, I think it would indicate. I mean, look, Bernie's support is what Bernie's support is here. I don't know that, frankly, it's impacted. Maybe supporters of Bernie will be, sort of like energized, and there'll be a sense of like more possibility. I also think what could happen is that the right, the center in this country will possibly take Bernie more seriously, which in the short term could be, I think there's some value to Bernie sort of not being taken seriously by these people at this point, because he's not being attacked in the way that they probably should be attacking him, frankly, if they were smart about their politics, because I think they're going to be surprised by how much support he has. And so
they're hoping they never have to deal with him head on, I think.
I think I feel like they don't have him on their radar. I think like this whole thing, that there's anti-Semitism in labor, and there's sort of like, I don't know why I know why there's a picture of Corbyn when they talk about anti-Semitism within the Labor Party. I have no doubt that there is some in the Labor Party. I have no doubt that there is anti-Semitism in just about every political party that exists. But I think Jeremy Corbyn's credentials on this, I think, are beyond reproach. But I think part of it is that it's an effective tool, frankly. And so that's why they use it. All right, I'm going to take one more phone call, then IMs and get out of here. Sorry, folks, got a lot of people on hold. I know it. Calling from an 810 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam, it's me. I'm a just segment. I'm calling from Oklahoma State University in Oklahoma, Stillwater. 3 weeks ago, I'm talking about this one guy who came to my campus. What was his name? He did a book, and he is doing a presentation over it called Socialism Sucks. Can't remember the end bit of it. But he basically had this hour-long coverage about his experiences going to Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea, and I found he was incredibly disingenuous and shit like that. And if I could fucking pull up his name, I'm wondering if you've heard about this book and just, yeah.
Let's see.
It's not Will Witt or Charlie Kirk, is it?
No, it wasn't Charlie Kirk. God, fuck no.
Was it Robert Lawson or Benjamin Powell?
Yes, Benjamin Powell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't know it. 2 economists drink their way through the unfree world. Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. It's fucking, incredibly disingenuous. I tried to ask him questions after. I expected this to be actually like, he'll do his, spiel, and he'll ask questions afterwards. He didn't do that. He only asked 2 questions, but then he's like, I'll do questions more afterwards. I was a bit flustered as I am now, but
I will say this. I am impressed that 2 economists can have their first fallacy before you even have to open the book. The idea that socialism is contrary to that, they've conflated an economic system with a political system on page, not even page 1. On the title page of their book. I'll look into it. I don't know much about it, but sounds like a real fun time.
Oh yeah,
sounds like.
Also, to my brothers served in the military. My oldest served in the Marines over in Afghanistan. Second oldest served in the Army over in Iraq. So, yeah, keep up the good fight with that.
All right. I appreciate the call. All right, folks, I'm sorry. That is it for our call-in portion of the program today. I'll read a couple IMs and we will get going. Communist Dog. I didn't even get to Hillary Clinton's ridiculousness on Howard Stern show.
We did some of that last week.
Okay. You did? When? On Thursday?
Yeah,
we did.
And I said we would give you an opportunity to defend her.
Oh. Communist Dog. It took California GOP Chairman Travis Allen 16 hours to start a recall of Governor Gavin Newsom the day after he was elected. The Chris Lapaco. My vote for best 2019 is Sam saying fucking. Todd. Sam, have you considered drugs to control your outbursts? I have in times, yes. Jay Tingle. It might not be because she's a woman, but it's the second time in recent weeks that you've overreacted to a statement Jamie has made. Michael wasn't there last time, but he's there to beat up on today. Thank you, Jay. Ozzy. All 5 coalition parties led by women in Finland. Oh, yes, I've heard about that. I did not get into that too much. Bang Bang Bart. Nancy Pelosi is about to be Time Magazine's 2019 Person of the Year. Ugh. She's did the face of this impeachment hearing, whether Sam likes it or not. Clap emoji. Brian from Chicago. Has anyone considered Sam got so angry because his close friend Janine was one of the people who got death threats and her career destroyed? Why, it hasn't been a good look. I hope that no one is really suggesting Sam was angry at Jamie for being a woman with an opinion. Jamie, I love your takes on things, but that was death's a nerve. I'll get my Antifata. Okay. Membership shortly as I have money coming my way. LOL.
Thank you.
And the final I am of the day. Don't beat yourself up too bad, Sam. Sure, the outburst wasn't your best moment, but knowing that those in power knew that the Iraq was BS and experiencing firsthand what Janine went through, if it were me, I would have flipped the desk. Your restraint was admirable. All right, folks. See you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks.